Sound like in our home.
Hello? 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 I am seeing you are saying muted. My muted. Yeah. Try again. Christopher, you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Gary was saying you're not hearing us.
I think he is on mute though.
Mute, yeah, I think so. I advise him about that.
Testing. You guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we
I
are here.
lost you there for a while. So let's so we're gonna try this again. MP Indarsingh was asking if you could respond to the government negligence and refusing of acknowledgement that they have responsibility in responding to such emergency situation where Pete Phillip is still under the rig, and I don't see the response of the government or the acknowledgement on that aspect of things. With 79 days, his body remains under the rig there that was broken down. So if you could respond to that and give us a little enlightenment, what you see is happening there on your end.
Well, again, we have been on the record as saying that this is a sense of worry not only for the family of Pete Phillips, whom I have been in touch with, and a couple of us who have this labor agenda, this workers' agenda, as it relates to trying to get this government to understand the importance of raising the labor standards and the occupational safety and health standards in the work environment. It is rather a clear indictment on the leadership of the incoming Prime Minister, the coronated one, the favored one, in the person of Stuart, in the context of him, in a few days will become the selected Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, not having one day faced the electorate in the context of being elected as the political leader of the People's National Movement. But coming back to the very critical issue where deaths continue to occur within the energy sector and by extension the work environment of Trinidad and Tobago. Stuart Young has been the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries for quite a number of years, in fact, since the death of Franklin Khan. And we all know what happened at Paria, what happened at Naikwan, what will happen at the successor company named as to ArcelorMittal and so on, and what has happened now in this field where Rig 110 was located in a field owned by Trinidad and Tobago, what was known as Heritage Petroleum. And it is rather sad that this gentleman, who is the Minister of Energy, cannot at least communicate with the family of Pete Phillips, his wife Candice, who has given birth to another child within the context of that family, and at least give her and her children, Pete Phillips's mother, brothers, and so on, siblings, a sense of closure as it relates to the Ministry of Energy working with well services to bring his body to the shore and bring closure to this particular matter. In fact, our oil industry is more than 100 years old, and I think that we must, as a society, ensure that not only companies and directors and the owners of capital are indeed protected and so on. We have a responsibility to ensure that there is a sense of protection too for workers and the government in the context of the tripartite process that we all boast of in terms of driving the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. The leadership has to come when there are situations, unfortunate as they may be, that the government takes the lead in providing this sense of direction. But we are not told, we have not heard from the government whether this is something now that will be abandoned in terms of the recovery of Pete Phillips's body, or is it a question of dollars and cents now that in terms of the cost of the recovery, the salvage operation, the search and recovery mission, is it too expensive for all involved, including the government, in providing this sense of closure? I ask this question whether this is a deliberate position which has been adopted, and the incoming Prime Minister, because I really am not concerned about Keith Rowley anymore. Keith Rowley has packed his bags and he has signaled that he is out of here. So the responsibility lies with the incoming Prime Minister, Stuart Young, to address this. And also, we must never forget, it has to be laid or contextualized in ongoing work that has occurred in the energy sector since the Paria incident, the Commission of Inquiry, the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry as it relates to the King's Counsel, Jerome Lynch. What were the recommendations? And up till today, Stuart Young cannot provide, the government of Trinidad and Tobago cannot provide a sense of leadership to tell us whether 1 recommendation, 10 recommendation, and what has been done to improve the overall state of health and safety in the energy sector against the background of ongoing work 3+ years since this Paria incident has occurred. And that is why it is rather sad, it is rather painful and traumatic that Candace Phillip, the wife and his children, has to undergo this particular scenario without having any sense of communication, any sense of embrace and support from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension, the employer of Pete Phillips also, who seem to have gone silent in this particular scenario. And this leads me again to the very critical issue. You know, this fella, now, all of a sudden, he wants to protect women and offer all the support to the women in Trinidad and Tobago in a real cheap attempt at public relations on the eve of International Women's Day, and attempting to try and buy votes by telling women that he will bring legislation to protect women against abuse and so on. This is shameful. This is shameless. This is unadulterated, what I would call prostituting himself. Where's the protection for Vanessa Kusi? Where's the protection for the wife of Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Yusuf Korban, and Faisal Korban, and even the wife of lone survivor Christopher Budram, who is also having to piece her life again? Where is that sense of protection and guidance for these women when they most needed it? Where's the protection for Candace Phillip, the wife of Pete Phillip? Why did Stuart Young and Keith Rowley parade them at the office of the Prime Minister, attempt to create some kind of glimmer of hope that they were in this meeting, that where they were brought to the office of the Prime Minister, that indeed they would have been embraced by the government, some kind of empathy and compassion and feel would have been displayed by the government, and they would have been told that indeed, if we cannot fully emotionally protect you, we will financially protect you in terms of the stability of your life by ensuring that the recommendation as it relates to financial compensation to the spouses of the deceased divers and for Christopher Budram was upheld as recommended by Jerome Lynch and the commissioners and so on. That, for me, would have really given legitimacy to the fact that Stuart Young is really signaling to the country that indeed he's concerned about protecting women who are vulnerable and who needs the support to piece their lives again. Unless there is tangible action from the incoming Prime Minister and this PNM government, all I could say, I will attempt to tell the women of this country, when they go to the general elections, whenever they are called, whenever it is called, they must remember, the women of Trinidad and Tobago must remember how the spouses of the Paria divers were treated, how the spouse of Pete Phillip was treated, how the spouse and family of Kearney Tien, Rossi Mansing, Alan Lane Ramkisoon, who all died in industrial workplace accidents, have been treated by this government, headed by Rowley and soon to be headed by Stuart Young. And I don't have to recap, but it is important because the country knows it. It wasn't fabricated by Rudranath Indarsingh or Kamla Prasad Bisasa or any sitting member of the United National Congress, or it was not artificially, from an artificial intelligence point of view, generated. We all heard the outrageous, the vulgar, the obscene conduct of Stuart Young in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, in his unwarranted and unsolicited attack on the leader of the opposition, and by extension, all the women who were present in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, to the point where he was reprimanded, he was berated, he was scolded by the Speaker of the House, who indeed told him in no uncertain manner that he needed to redeem himself in terms of his conduct as a member of sitting member of Parliament in relation to what transpired with the hot mic and the conversation that he was having at the time with the Minister of Finance.
So, MP, I would like to add also the woman that he locked out of the country, but we will deal with that in another day.
Yeah, we will deal with it, yeah, in the context of COVID and so on. But this is an obscene attempt by attempting to convince the woman. Where was Stuart Young when, because he was in the cabinet? You must never forget that when a fellow cabinet minister behaved in a very vulgar to obscene manner, sexually harassed a woman, an employee of the Ministry of Sport, and in an attempt to close that matter, to suppress it in the most obscene of ways, where taxpayers' money was used, $150,000 to silence
as hush money.
Hush money. And you know what really irks me in terms of the double standards, the hypocrisy of this gentleman? When the government appointed a 3-person committee, and we must remember this, we must never forget this. 3 prominent women in Trinidad and Tobago, now, one by the name of a woman's activist, social activist by the name of Folade Matuta, one person by the name of Elaine Green, an attorney at law. I do not know if it's the same Elaine Green, who is now carrying the title of senior counsel, and of retired permanent secretary and human resource specialist Jackie Wilson. When the cabinet appointed this committee and to investigate what transpired in terms of the allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct by a sitting cabinet minister, when the report was compiled by these 3 women, and it was found that the actions of the then parliamentary colleague and cabinet colleague of Stuart Young was found to be wanting, it was found to be obscene, it was found to be an abuse in terms of using taxpayers' money, and the way that cabinet minister conducted himself at that point in time. Where was Stuart Young to protect this vulnerable employee, this woman at the Ministry of Sport? And when the report was compiled, did he raise his voice and said he wanted that report to be made public? No. He was part of the cabinet that sent this report for sanitization to the office of the Attorney General. And that report cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. And today, we must not buy, the women of Trinidad and Tobago must not buy the propaganda, the hogwash, the obscene attempt of buy votes by coming from the voice of Stuart Young, saying that he, if elected as Prime Minister, he will do all in his power to protect women from being abused in Trinidad and Tobago. Stuart Young, too late, and it reeks of double standard and hypocrisy on your part.
MP, your mic was muted for a little while. I don't know.
No, I
Thank you.
think that
Muted.
Yeah, we
I think
wasn't.
the problem seems to be on your end, Gary,
Yeah, we do.
because Christopher, I think, can bear testimony that he was hearing me
Somehow we wasn't
loud
hearing.
and clear.
Yeah, you could hear a little bit.
All right.
Chris, you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
just briefly, because MP touched in great detail there. I am in full agreement with what he said regarding the Minister Stuart Young. Right, we would have received numerous promises from him in the past. He has proven himself to me to be someone who is not interested in the working class, who is predominantly focused on putting forward an image to investors as well as to win the contractor and the business class to do work in Trinidad and Tobago. And while that is not bad, for him to be able to make a statement to the world that citizens in Trinidad and Tobago are enjoying a very good life, it's either he is completely out of touch with the situations that the working class face in Trinidad and Tobago, or he is completely ignorant and not prepared for the office that he holds. Because clearly he seems to only be speaking about the persons who are well off and very well able to take care of themselves in this country. So with respect to the situation with Pete, I will also admit that it is not an easy situation to rescue. But the issue is not that, The issue is the fact that almost 80 days can pass and there seems to be no urgency when it comes to recovering the body of Pete Phillip. The information coming to us is that the reason why March was called, the month of March, to recover his body is because the equipment required to remove Rig 110 from site will be here at that time. So the priority again doesn't seem to be on recovery of the body. It seems to be that the priority at this time is to address the issues with respect to the failure of Rig 110, and Pete Phillip, the body of Pete Phillip, will be recovered as a side item, as a benefit of. And that is where we find ourselves. What is even more alarming to me is a statement released by Well Services this week, in which they would have claimed on a newspaper article that they will only compensate the family after a DNA test has been performed and the body recovered. Now, what sort of heartlessness could a company have, knowing that a family member would have lost their lives on your job site? The body is still to be recovered. The body could be in whatever condition it is now, but you are telling the family members that you cannot get nothing unless we do a DNA test on that body. Now is not the time for those kind of statements. What they should be saying and what they should be doing is ensuring that the family has all their needs met, absolutely all their needs met. In fact, what they should have done is provide the salary of Pete every month until that body is recovered. And to add to that, they should be comforting the family that all is being done to recover the body of Mr. Phillip. But no, at this point in time, the employer class in this country is emboldened to the point where they believe that they can deal with situations like this in this manner, and nobody is holding them accountable. This is the way that Stuart Young wants industrial accidents to be treated. This is the way that Keith Rowley wants industrial accidents to be treated in this country. And it hurts me when the situation with the divers is dragged through the situation it currently has to go through, where the families have to to raise this issue numerous occasions. And then we hear responses from persons like Harry Partap, who would come and place the blame on the family members for being misguided and misled in terms of the way they would have treated with the incident. Apparently, Mr. Partap believes that the way it should be dealt with is what is happening now with Pete Phillip, where nobody says anything, where the family just sits down and wait, and the employer continues along their business as normal with the body to the bottom of the sea. Is that what he deems normal? Is that what he deems as proper practice for industrial accidents? No, we reject that 110%. In fact, going forward, this fight with the Paria divers must be made as an example. In fact, I would like to ask the UNC, in fact, I would like to insist that the UNC utilizes the name of the Paria divers to build and form legislation in this country going forward to ensure that this sort of treatment of family members, this sort of response to industrial accidents never is allowed to happen again in Trinidad and Tobago.
What I want to see here also is that our UNC government will put resources in place so that our Coast Guard is trained and also capable of responding to such emergencies. We would need to contract with the UK Navy so that we could have them here in Trinidad and Tobago to train our people for such incidents, because not only do we need to be able to respond to such incidents, we need to patrol our underwater territory, so that we should have had these resources in place already, so after being 100 years in the
I think I lost you there again.
Gary, wherever the stream or the connectivity seems to be coming and going this evening, I don't know for what reason, but from where I am hearing Christopher well, and I think that Christopher is hearing me well.
I'm hearing you very well.
Yeah. But I don't know if, in terms of the link from your end, something seems to be off this evening.
Agreed. I think he needs to get a stronger connection from his end. Right. While we wait for him to reconnect, I don't know if MP would allow me to just speak a bit on this Petrotrin situation.
Yeah. And before you go there, I as you rightly said, that the in addressing the issue of using the names of the divers and legislation and so on to going forward to ensure that such an accident really doesn't happen in the workplace, I can safely say that indeed a UNC incoming government will address the issue of the implementation of the recommendations of the
we seem to lost connection. You guys hearing me now?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Go ahead, MP, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just addressing something that Christopher raised in the context of the Paria divers and the recommendations, and ensuring that industrial accidents does not occur in such a manner again. I think that the recommendations needs to be implemented. The whole question of amendments to the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and also the issue of addressing, from a legislative point of view, corporate manslaughter in the work environment and so on. These things have been committed as we go forward, and I am sure that with the support of the Attorney General and incoming cabinet, whoever that person may be, and also the Legislative Review Committee. These things will be addressed. And also, the need, and you are right, Christopher, when you said that the recovery of the body of Pete Phillips is very complex. It is not something that we are saying a magic one must be woven, has to be woven, and it will be resolved. But our oil industry is 100 plus years old, and we need to raise the standards. We need to collaborate. If there are limitations in terms of what we have at our disposal, we need to own up and say so. I mean, look what happened in out in the North Sea. You had a collision between two tankers, one carrying jet fuel for the U.S. Navy, one carrying sodium cyanide. The tankers collided, search and rescue, and so on. 30 out, I think 37 people were brought to the shore safely. I think one person of Portuguese nationality has not been recovered. But it shows a state of readiness to respond to a crisis whenever it occurs. We had our oil spill off Cove in Tobago. We don't know who were involved up till today. We must never forget the Minister of Finance boasting in the Parliament that they trying to collect the name of the vessel. It was arrested somewhere in Angola. And what is the arrest of the vessel has brought, or what it has meant for the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago? Has it done anything to say that those impacted upon the coastline, the Tobago House of Assembly, the fisher folk in Tobago, have they been compensated or will be compensated as a result of the arrest of the Solo Creed? Yes, my memory is serving me correctly. Yeah, the Solo Creed and the Gulf Stream, as it relates to the Minister of Finance in his usual propaganda and very deceptive style, stood up in the Parliament that day in a response to a question from me, myself. He said that the Solo Creed was arrested and it will bring tremendous benefits to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Not 1 cent. We do not know who are the owners. Nobody has been indicted from a responsibility point of view. And we are no better off today because of the continued incompetence of whether Rowley, Stuart Young, or Imbert, and all of them combined at the level of the cabinet of this country.
Well said, Andy.
So, MP, I was saying earlier, I think somehow we lost the volume. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that our UNC government must put certain things in place, resources, so that we are capable of responding. Our Coast Guard must be trained. We must contract with either the United Kingdom Navy and the US government to train our Coast Guard, because apparently our Coast Guard can barely protect our borders at this stage, much less to respond to such an emergency. We have been 100 plus years in the oil industry and doing this type of offshore work, and we do not have the necessary equipment to respond to such emergencies, and I find that to be totally unacceptable. I also find that in this day and age where we need to be able to patrol our underwater territory, that certain equipment should have already been, within our resources. And so we definitely have a lot of upgrading to do. But I'm going to let Christopher go ahead and add to what you've been saying there, MP.
Yes. Also, yes, I need to agree with you there, because right now we're all aware of the situation with the Coast Guard. In fact, I know there was a story recently about a smuggling operation where one officer would have lost his life. Right? I haven't heard much about that situation as of recent to see if they even reclaimed the body or what would have been the outcome of that. But the Coast Guard seems to be grossly undermanned and under-equipped for the current situation that they face with respect to securing the borders. So far, it's going to be a lot more for them to be able to respond to these incidents, seeing that they're already having such difficulty with maintaining security across the borders. We're looking at what would have occurred for the divers. The Coast Guard was basically used as a barricade to prevent people from coming to the site. And while that is required to an extent, I believe that their jurisdiction was exceeded greatly by them preventing persons from rescuing. But the information that would have come out in the Commission of Inquiry is that that instruction would have come from Paria. So the Coast Guard, even if they would have had some ability to respond, if they did, they and all may not have been able to respond on the day based on the advice from Paria. So at the end of the day, I hold Paria responsible for the response to that incident. With respect to what has taken place with Pete Phillip, while the response is very, very slow, it's absolutely not acceptable to me. I still am given some comfort by hearing the company Well Services suggest that they are going to compensate the families. Now, whether they will do that is left to be seen, and avoid having the companies take a long matter, fight through the courts and go in legal battles through Well Services and Heritage to get compensation. I really hope that that fate is not also faced by the wife of Pete Phillip, right? But albeit, again, I want to say again, the Coast Guard has their responsibility, but right now they are not even able to meet and maintain their mandate, far more to assist in rescue operations on the coastlines of Trinidad and Tobago. Right now, I don't know. I know I wanted to just interject a bit on the Petrotrin situation there. Could I speak to that?
You go ahead. I will support. I have some comments to make on that too. But you go ahead.
Nice. So I really need to say that it is good now that the voices of the OWTU are being heard a bit more now. And again, I need to thank our UNC comrades for that, because the PNM propaganda machine is a juggernaut. And sometimes in the past, when we would have spoken to these things, persons wouldn't really have paid attention until now, where the voice and the message is carried a bit more. So on behalf of the OWTU, I really need, and all the workers affected by this, I really need to say thanks to the UNC for assisting us in getting the message out there, right? But specifically, the statement made by the Honorable Leader, Ms. Kamala Prasad Bissessa, regarding the refinery and Petrotrin as a whole making an operating profit in 2018, right? This is one of the most important points that we cannot afford to belittle. And the reason why I can say that is because the argument put forward by the PNM and the propaganda machine is that the refinery was a loss-making entity that had to be shut down. The refinery was losing money and had no hope of survival. All remaining parts of Petrotrin that would be salvageable would be the fields and the importation of products through Paria. That is the message that they are trying to sell, which is exactly why the statement made by the Honorable Leader is so important, which is exactly why Stuart Young would have had to counter by stating that the company made an operating loss in 2018. It is common knowledge now, and this has been said before, that $15.5 billion from that $16.2 billion loss is allocated to impairment charges. When the bidders were coming into this country to bid for the refinery, TPHL, Imber would have told each of those bidders that the company, Petrotrin, the refinery, made an operating profit of $1.6 billion. He is saying that behind closed doors. But when he's speaking to the population, he sells a tune of 16 billion. I want to go a little bit further this evening. Persons will remember that Colmember would have made a statement in Parliament when it just came into power, I believe in 2016. And he raised umbrage. He took umbrage with the UNC for granting an amnesty on taxes for the period that the People's Partnership would have been in charge of Trinidad and Tobago. During those 5 years under the partnership, Petrotrin made one of the largest profits that they would have ever seen. All right, and in fairness, while oil prices were high, 2 years under that administration would have seen significant profits. 2 years would have seen losses as a result of the implementation of the 2 loans that would have been taken in 2007 and 2009. And in 2015, we would have again seen a loss. But the point I want to raise is that under the People's Partnership Administration, they granted Petrotrin an amnesty on taxes, right? When that amnesty was granted, Petrotrin still paid taxes, Petrotrin still made payments towards Trinidad and Tobago, and the profits of the country would have benefited, the profits of the company would have benefited the country. When the PNM came into office in 2016, Colmember insisted that all those deferred taxes be paid. And that would have hit the books of Petrotrin in 2016 and added a further $3 billion in liability on the company's books. So when you look at the loss that was made for Petrotrin of $4 billion, don't think that that is an operating loss. It is not an operating loss. It is a loss that would have been amplified by a $3 billion cost that would have been attributed to deferred taxes that would have been granted under the People's Partnership Administration. So I'm saying all of this to convince Trinidad and Tobago that we know the 16 billion loss in 2018 was overly inflated. We know the 4 billion loss in 2016 was also overly inflated. All of these are shown on the audited financials for Petrotrin for the year 2016 and 2018. It is available clear for all to see. 2017, there would have been a $2 billion loss. The argument of the WTU is that the refinery is not a loss-making entity. The refinery would have had its challenges that would have been thrust on it because of the debt burden that would have been placed on it in 2007 and 2009, where the PNM government would have taken out a loan for US $850 million and US $750 million. The $850 million US dollar loan was a bullet payment. And what that means is that at maturity, you have to pay the full $850 million, which would have been 10 years from 2009. The interest on that $850 million had to be paid on a yearly basis, biannually actually. So it is not that we had to make no installments on that $850 million over that 10-year period. Interest payments would have had to be made twice a year for 10 years leading up to 2019. So every year of operation, Petrotrin would have been saddled with sometimes over $1 billion in loan financing. And that is the reason why Petrotrin was tipped into a loss-making entity. If you go back and you look at the financials before 2007, you would have seen a company that would have made a profit every year without ceasing. It is exactly in the year 2008-2009 that the losses started. And it went straight into the People's Partnership Administration, where with high oil prices, we still managed to make profits even under that significant debt burden. And when the PNM came back into office, they did everything possible to sell an image that Petrotrin was a failing entity. That is clearly seen in 2016 by them asking for all deferred tax payments to be repaid. And in 2018, they sold a story that the refinery, that Petrotrin made a loss of 16 billion. And if you listen to them, they will tell you that all in all, if you add all the profits and losses, Petrotrin has made a loss overall. But now we understand that $15 billion of that loss is as a result of impairment that would have never existed if the company was still running. Let us clear our minds from the propaganda. We have shut down one of the largest contributors to the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago. That will go down as one of the greatest sins of this administration. And that is not only on the shoulders of Keith Rowley. Stuart Young sat by and allowed him to do this. Stuart Young sat by and defended him, and currently is still in defense of the Prime Minister for the action that he took. Right? And for that and that reason alone, he must never be Prime Minister of this country.
I think Stuart Young is part and parcel of the whole decision making that Dr. Rowley makes. I think he's the chief advisor and influencer on Dr. Rowley's decision making. So Stuart Young cannot be excluded. Go ahead, MP.
Gary, you're quite right, and Christopher's really dealt with that issue, and I just want to expand on it because you cannot separate Rowley and Young. Rowley has been the Prime Minister. Stuart Young has been a minister in the office of the Prime Minister, has been a failed Minister of National Security, has been a failed Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. What has been the success story? What can you tell me that Stuart Young has done that can resonate with the people of Trinidad and Tobago in a very positive manner in the last 10 years? In terms of one success story. And I mean, we could pause here for a minute or two and try and zero in on what has this gentleman done that we can say is groundbreaking, revolutionary in the context of his respective ministerial portfolios. And Christopher dealt with this narrative that they have been trying to create in the public domain that Petrotrin was losing money and it was the need to reduce the dependency on the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago and so on. But also, we must never forget that this is the same cabinet that made a commitment. I can remember I was sitting in Parliament, and when Colman Burt made that statement that the preferred bidder in terms of, or the favored bidder at the time was Patriotic Energies and so on. He was in great ecstasy. He nearly fell off his chair in his joy to announce that Patriotic Energies was the preferred bidder in terms of the restart of the refinery's operation following their decision to close. And his famous words, if I could recollect correctly, listening and looking at him, was, "Let those who labor hold the reins of power," and so on, in terms of when they made that decision. And again, that is why you cannot trust Rowley, Young, Imbert, Al-Rawi, D.L. Singh. Hines is no longer in the picture. Marvin Gonzalez, Foster Cummings, all of them, you cannot trust. And that is why we have to ask this question, because I don't want to mispronounce, but the company that is the preferred bidder is OANDO, Oando PLC. And this favored bidder, we must never forget, has been suspended from 2 international stock exchanges, and certain senior officials have been accused of corruption in the past. In addition to that, Oando PLC has given no commitment or no guarantee of if it comes and it sets up its business operations here, that it will be using local professionals and services. We do not know how they will go about in terms of raising the over $1 billion which will be needed in terms of startup capital for the restart of the refinery. And this Oando, which is based in Nigeria, is involved in the exploration, production, and distribution of crude oil and natural gas, but they have never operated a refinery. And this is where the company has had major cash flow problems with high debt and liabilities and so on. And the facts are out there. It's not Indarsingh or Christopher Jackman or Kamla Prasad Bisesa is saying this, but it is public knowledge. It is out in the public domain that Oando has been suspended for varying periods from the Nigerian and Johannesburg stock exchanges, and senior officials in the past have been accused of false disclosure, market abuses, misstatements of financial accounts, internal control failures, and corporate governance lapses caused by poor board oversights and so on. So, I mean, in the context of good governance and transparency in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Stuart Young and this committee that made the decision to award Oando PLC has a lot of questions to answer on behalf of the people in relation to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is not that the UNC is against direct foreign direct investment and so on in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, but we want what is in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And if the government cannot provide that information, then as an opposition, then as stakeholders within the society, we will continue to raise the red flags and hoist these flags in the context of pressuring the government. So they could go on mount their horse again and indicate that the UNC is not patriotic. The UNC is fulfilling its role as an opposition in the context of patriotism and holding the government to account.
So is the government being patriotic with their actions at this point? The amount of negligence, would that be considered patriotism? I mean,
Well,
look,
when you
we've
do
so
not
many
act,
repeats.
when you do not act in the interest of the people of the country, when you do not provide transparency and accountability and uphold the standards of the high standards of good governance in the context of a major decision such as this, then all we can say is that there's more in the mortar than the pestle, and in the context of what the government is doing on the eve of a general election, we can only say that there seems to be the fish is rotting from the head, and there is something that is definitely not smelling right and fishy as it relates to the award of Oando over Inca Energy LLC and the CRO consortium. The latter, which was a group of 3 companies, one which is Trinidad and Tobago owned.
Well, this stench is so strong, MP. I'm smelling it all the way here in the USA. So, I think, in my opinion, there seems to be a deliberate, tragedy to cripple some of the businesses in the country for a buyout by others. There has to be some strategy involved because I mean, the way everything is looking at from my end, it seems that a lot of these actions were done by design, and that's how I look at it at this point. Maybe you can correct me on that.
Well, I've already made the case, and Christopher Jackman, Comrade Jackman, has already pointed out the government is going down the road of engaging in propaganda and providing false information to Trinidad and Tobago, the citizens of this country. And the very big question will be, has to be answered by Stuart Young and the cabinet, is why did the government give the refinery restart to a firm with no refinery experience? That in itself raises the biggest red flag, and I have outlined a number of issues which has to be considered in the context of whether this entity can stand up to scrutiny in the context of good governance, accountability, and transparency.
So, Christopher, you want to add anything to MP Indarsingh at this stage here? I don't know. I think I lost your mic. Is your mic?
Yes, I was muted there. Sorry about that. Yeah, so just in response,
Yeah.
I don't think it's all a case of them selling out assets that they for or putting assets in a situation for someone else to purchase. I honestly think that they're very bad at
Doing
encouraging investment. They're very, very bad. If you go back in history and take a look at Sandals, I'm just going to call examples. Sandals and that deal, that was a horrible arrangement they were getting ready to put Trinidad and Tobago in, and they tried to defend that to this day. If you look at the situation with Jindal coming into the country, that was another disaster. If you look at the GTL plant, Naikwan, the attempt to start up that was another failure. It's as though everything they try just comes to naught. They've tried to sell the refinery how much times in the past? I just think they're very, very bad at what they do. And they need someone there. They need somebody fresh inside there. We need to move them out and bring in somebody with some fresh ideas. And let's see if we could get this thing right. Because for the last 9 years, in fact, going on 10 years now, this country has not seen any new development, any new industry to really come out and generate foreign exchange for Trinidad and Tobago. All we've seen is a list of examples of failures that they love to blame the UNC for stopping, when in really and truly it's their incompetence, right? And they just don't like to admit that. So it basically boils down to that, in my opinion.
And
right, and you make a good point there in exposing them,
Yes, it's totally incompetence, a lack of leadership, a lack of vision, a lack of the political will. And when you cannot arrest crime and you cannot diversify your economy and so on, it really tells you that you have no vision. After 10 years, what else can you sell to the country? The country knows that you are incompetent. The country knows that you have no vision. The country knows that the economy is in shambles. The citizen knows that you cannot arrest crime. You cannot deal with the social challenges facing the citizens of the country. The country knows, the citizens are aware that you have created there's no job creation, there's no hope. So the only solution really is to have a new government in the context of a United National Congress government led by the political leader of the UNC, the Kamla Prasad Bisasa, and a prime minister and a government that has had a track record that focus on people-centered development and improving the quality of life and standard of living of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
I've seen some videos and pictures of the so-called Port of Spain General Hospital addition that they're boasting about, and it seems like it's like a skeleton. Basically, there is no internal organs, more like there's a body outside. It's lacking. So
So that is something we will have to deal with. So it's more lies, mama guys, that we have seen consistently, and incompetence.
Well, India here's to again convince. I shouldn't say convince, but to hoodwink the population. This is con men at the very best. I mean, I cannot put it no other way. This is con men in operation at their very best. And what they are doing, hoping to do, what the Prime Minister is hoping to do, is to open a number of projects with Stuart Young and hope that the population will buy into him as somebody that is competent. But when you look at the videos that are circulating as it relates to the central block, and over 1.3 billion dollars I think was spent out there. I mean, it is probably just one level or one ward that they went into yesterday when they cut the ribbon, and they had a few beds and so on. I do not that they attempted to convince the population that all the floors were in a state of readiness. The Alsing must tell the country when the first patient or the first batch of patients will be admitted to the central block. That is the undertaking that they should have told the taxpayers of this country. And in addition to that, when will operations or whatever will be done, what medical procedures and so on will be done within the confines of the central block. And it is very clear that, again, their propaganda continues. It has no boundaries at all in terms of what level, how low they are prepared to stoop in terms of attempting to convince the population that indeed something has been done in the interest of healthcare and the well-being of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. All the videos that came to me, and if I'm trying to see if I could pull it up here, Gary, in terms of if I could show something that may be of concern to the people of this country, in the context of what happened or what really did not happen out at the central block yesterday. I don't know if it has come to you, but it has come to me.
Yeah, I got the video. I have to organize my system where I can add it into the
Yeah.
stream, and that's something I have to work on. But you can go ahead and Christopher, you want to add anything while MP looking for that? Oh,
No, it seemed not to be coming up on my phone. So, but the facts are the facts. That when we opened the
right.
Cova Children's Hospital, it was not a construction site. It was fully outfitted. It had beds. It had all the equipment and so on was inside there, and all that was needed was to operationalize it in the context of getting the doctors and nurses and so on, which was being handled at the time by the Southwest Regional Health Authority under the chairmanship of the current member of Parliament for Faizabad, Lakram Bodo. In their haste, I think tomorrow sometime they will attempt to cut the ribbon for some. I don't know how many times they will have an opening for that expansion of the highway between Chase Village, the Chase Village and Shagwana flyover. Is only under PNM government you could have every week an opening of a lane or an opening of some expanse, a partial opening and so on. That is a terminology unheard
What
of.
is it? 1 kilometer at a time. I've been on that highway. That stretch there. I was coming up to Cuba there, and it's like it's taking forever.
It's taken forever. It has caused a lot of pain, mental pain, agony, trauma, loss of productivity, loss of manpower hours, you name it, general frustration. And if people really address the issues in the upcoming general election, the way Rohan Sinanan handled this issue of the expansion of this highway between Shogwanas and the Chaseville flyover, that's another reason to vote out of the People's National Movement of Stuart Young. And I think that they are trying, Rowley in his desperation to sell his legacy or impose his legacy on the people of Tobago now. I know that they have a schedule. I don't know if it is a partial opening or a partial ribbon cutting for the terminal at the NR Robinson International Airport in Tobago. I shudder to think, based on what I've seen in terms of the level of outstanding work at the Central Block, what we may discover when there is this ribbon cutting exercise as it relates to this terminal. It is, and I want to reiterate, it is not a new airport. It has been marketed as something as a new airport. It's really the government is selling the opening of a terminal and not an airport, and people must not be misled in terms of the way the government's public relations is coming across.
Also, that Tobago hospital is what we that finished it, right, and equipped it.
Yeah, we outfitted it. We finished it. We had to. The cat lab was not operational, and so on, when we became the government of Trinidad and Tobago under Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bissessa. So we have always looked after the affairs of the people of Tobago also in the context of the government that the UNC is part and parcel of, whether it was Prime Minister Prasad Bissessa or Prime Minister Basdev Pandey. And in this context, this is how the people of Trinidad and Tobago must see the UNC in terms of looking after the interests of the unitary state of this country.
Which I find is absolutely necessary, because we cannot let that be swept under the carpet. Is the UNC foundation, the founding members of the UNC is the one that was involved in improving the labor conditions and fighting for the people. And this information must be reiterated as much as possible, that the younger generation understand who is responsible for putting the right things in place for making life better for them in the country. And when they go to the voting polls, that they must understand why and why they are voting for UNC and what UNC stands for.
Well, as you rightly said, and I mean, I don't know how long you have again, but because I have some other things to do also.
Yeah. You can wrap up if you want, but I have all the time to give you guys. Christopher, go ahead.
But the important thing is that we must always accept the fact that it is a UNC government that brought a sense of development, a sense of hope to the people of Trinidad and Tobago between 2010 and 2015. And we must never forget, it is the PNM of Prime Minister Dr. Rowley that has failed to deliver on more than half of its manifesto promises between 2015 and 2025. And 2025. We must never forget that they have promised, they have lied, they have deceived, they have misled you. And this is why that in going to the polls, whenever the general elections are called, we must be able to understand what is at stake in terms of the future of Trinidad and Tobago. We must never forget that the PNM government of Dr. Rowley, they reduced or they cut. At first they had abolished the laptop program, and then shamelessly, when they saw the need for it, they disguised it, attempted to reformat it. But it was the laptop program that the partnership under Mrs. Prasad Bissessa had initiated. They cut it. They cut the number of scholarships. They cut the free textbook. They cut the schooling feeding program. They have reduced school transport. And never forget that when we, under our stewardship, where we were able to settle 135 negotiations and pay $5 billion in back pay at a time when we inherited the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Stuart Young, again, we must never forget, and so on. They were part of the PNM while not being elected into office at that point in time. But they offered the workers of this country 000 at a time when oil price was $147 per barrel of oil, and natural gas was being sold somewhere in the vicinity of $9 per MMBTU. And they offered to the workers of this country via the collective bargaining process was 000. And there are a number of collective agreements that were left outstanding. That is why when we came into government, we had to find the wherewithal, give support to the office of the CPO and the collective bargaining process, the state enterprises where negotiations needed to be hammered out, to be settled. And when there was settlement, for example, at the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, where there was an agreement for 12% between the recognized majority union and the employer, that is the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union and the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. This government reneged. This government undermined the collective bargaining process. This government abandoned a signed collective agreement for a 12% wage increase at the Port Authority. That was also clearly demonstrated when there was a signed agreement between the National Insurance Board, its management, and the recognized majority union, the Public Services Association. So whilst a UNC government facilitated the free and fair, independent and collective bargaining process, the government of Prime Minister Dr. Rowley and Colm Imbert and Stuart Young hijacked the collective bargaining process and offered 4% to workers at a time when they offered themselves and accepted a 47% wage increase.
Christopher, you want to add anything to this?
Well, I wanted to jump in on the hospital discussion because it fell quite in line with exactly what we were saying before, and I couldn't put it better if I had to say it myself. That is a classic example of the PNM propaganda machine. They have tried to convince the country that, and I shouldn't say they have tried, in their desperate attempt to have something that they could put forward to say that they would have completed. They would have tried to bamboozle the country to believe that this hospital is now open. When, after seeing that video, in my opinion, that is a scandal. $1.3 billion, and you still see any areas in the hospital looking like that. That is a scandal. That requires some sort of audit or investigation to really determine what is taking place there, because it cannot be that we allow them to get away with things like this. They have again tried to mislead this country, and we must hold them accountable. We must insist on that, and I'm 100% certain the airport in Tobago will be the exact same situation, right? So I would like to deal with one particular issue, if you would allow me.
Please deal with what you have to. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I know I wanted to. I know you asked about commenting on the statements made by Comrade Indarsingh, but I believe this is also very important, and I will speak to it because I see it, right? The population of this country needs to understand, especially I'm speaking here to the UNC supporters, they need to understand that there's only one way to remove this government from power. You see all this internal arguments that we've been having among ourselves, that could only result in division among the party, and division among the party will cause the PNM to remain because the PNM is a machine. So you see all this argument about Miss Bissessa, Miss Kamala Prasad Bissessa needs to step down, and all these resignations that are happening within the party. Let us not be distracted by these arguments, right? We need to be saying this more out loud and with confidence, right? There's absolutely no accomplishment of this PNM government that warrants them another 5 years in office. In fact, the PNM will want to make the UNC supporters believe that the members of parliament that they currently have going up are not good enough and not of good quality. But all I ask, my only response to that is for every UNC member to picture to themselves that Colin Imbert is going up again for another 5 years in this country. Keith Scotland is going up again for another 5 years in this country. And you have a problem with David Lee and Rudal Munilal? No, let us not allow the PNM to divide the UNC because that is the only way they can win. Put all these arguments aside. There's no third party that has the ability to remove the PNM from power. None. If you add all the undecided voters in Trinidad and Tobago, they will never outnumber the base of the PNM and the UNC. The only way the PNM can be removed is for the undecided voters to join forces with the UNC supporters and remove this government from power. That is the only way. Let us not be distracted by the blue parties. Let us not be distracted by all the other small parties. They are there to divide and allow the PNM to see their way back into office. Let us allow now to be a rallying time for the UNC to strengthen this party. Advise each and every MP that is putting themselves forward for office. I do it all the time with Comrade Indarsingh. I tell him what I believe he should do as I see him as the Labour Minister coming in. Let us empower our MPs to run this country the way we believe it should be run. Let us not focus on tearing this party apart. Forget these naysayers like Marsha Walker and Suzette Lowe and these people who are pushing an agenda to divide the party. Now is not the time for that. Focus on the one thing that is important, that is removing the PNM. I cannot leave here tonight without stressing on that because I know how important it is. It is what I put my time on. I'm very happy to see and to hear the political leader in her speech at Maruga yesterday list out all the manifesto promises of the UNC. Anybody listening to that will know without a doubt that even if she gets 50% of that done, this country will be a better place. This is not to underscore the challenge that she will be facing going into government, because the PNM has made a complete mess of this place. Right? But we need to rally behind the UNC at this point in time. Put everything aside, put all divisions aside, and let us focus on what needs to be done to rebuild this country and make this country better for ourselves and our children going forward. I strongly believe that this is the way to go. I'm not a person that is politically motivated. I don't have political aspirations, but I see the importance of speaking out now. And I will continue to do it until we cross the finish line. So I hope my voice reaches the ears of every UNC and independent supporter.
I strongly support you on that statement, Brother Christopher. What is amazing is that the level of things we have seen done in the country and the level of incompetence, arrogance, and mismanagement and mistreatment, they find it suitable to criticize Mrs. Bissessa. The people on we side, forget the people that's outside. The people on we side find it suitable. And which one of them can do a better job than her? Not one of them could fit in her shoes.
Correct.
Her at this
Every
age,
case is a situation of a person putting themselves before the country and the party. Every case is an example of that. If you fought an election and lost, all right, you lost, put that aside and focus on the country and the party. But people seem to be incapable of doing that.
you know what, they want to claim. I mean, when you look at the map of the country, you see most of the country is yellow, and we would have to deal with this demographics as we go forward into government, where I mean, the majority of the country is yellow, and you still see the red in power to take government. So we have to restrict some things. We have to deal with those things. We have a lot of
Correct.
investigative things to do with how money was spent. But our main focus right now is to do our best to educate the people on what's the reality of things, take into consideration what's happening, and that all of us needs to come together in a unified fashion. Basti Pandey explained it best that this is a two-horse race, and I like to add that there's no race to any other creature, that I won't say here right now, but so definitely we have to stick together. We have to be focused. If we want government, if we want to be in a situation or continue to be in a situation where you're not even secure in your own house.
Correct.
You can't go and get proper medical attention. So there's a lot. I mean, there's no ease of business in doing in the bank, going to the bank and doing business. There's so much complication. You are paying high. I saw Mrs. Bisisa address the rates of the banks, and I was happy she did that. So she did address a lot of things that she asked us to make contribution to the manifesto, which I see she did. So
Yeah, she
definitely
did
she's
well.
listening. She's listening to what we're saying. She's taking into consideration what all of us are saying. And we need a leader that will listen to us. We need a caring mother and not an infidel father to run our
Correct.
country. All right, we saw her
Government.
performance. It's not like something that we haven't seen. We have seen her in action. We have seen what she done. We saw her leadership. So I want to thank you and the OWTU for standing with her and realizing this is the best way to go. And I want to continue to encourage you guys. And also, this channel is available to you in the spur of a moment. You on the street, something happening, you want to make an address, give me a call. I create a link and you go live. Simple as that.
Appreciate.
Also, Mr. Dowlat in San Fernando West, I need to be able to bring him on the program, and I want to cover his walkabouts and whatever you guys are doing out there. That goes to all our candidates. So, with that, I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time to join us and to inform and educate the people. And if there's anything else you would like to add, please feel free to do that.
Well,
Yes, well,
not
just go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, MD.
well, not this evening, Gary, but I want to thank you for continuing to provide this platform, this opportunity for us to ventilate the issues impacting upon the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course for the work that the OWTU / Christopher Jackman for the Point of Bear branch are doing. And I'm sure that as you have indicated, he will speak to Dr. Dowlat, and I'm sure that Dr. Dowlat will come onto your program. I'll also mention it to him, and we will continue to prepare the population for an incoming government under Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, and we have the responsibility to stand firm, to remain resolute, to remind the country of her tried and tested leadership, and to rally behind her. And we know that those who are creating, as we would say, the couture in the UNC does not have the UNC at its heart and in terms of its interests and the future of this country. The PNM is split down the line, down the middle. Have they forgotten that there was Team Young and Team Beckles, and I don't know if Team Emery Brown and Team whoever, but they deal with whatever internal issues behind the scenes. They do not ventilate their dirty linen wash their dirty linen in the public, and they understand what party discipline is about. And if those who continue to say that they are interested in the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago and the democracy of political parties and so on, well, certainly the UNC can boast that it has held its internal election as a political leader elected by the rank and file and the membership of the party. And those who are focusing their guns on the UNC must be able to tell me if they are satisfied that there's democracy in the People's National Movement, and whether they are in support of a prime minister who is selected and not elected by the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
But how about the democracy about saving yourself, your life, your family life? You're in immediate danger in and outside your house, in your business. Your kids can be beaten up at school. I mean,
Well,
there's so many things,
well,
and that is not considered.
as you speak about crime, in fact, today, within the last 24 hours, in the constituency of Cuba South, there has been three robberies. I do not know if you know that the Chinmaya High School out in Calcutta, number 2. It was broken into around 1 a.m. this morning. 4 individuals heavily armed with cutlasses, Bigfoot, masks, and so on tied up the 2 security. Fortunately, they were not harmed, but they ransacked the drawers, they stole items, and so on. Then out in an area called McBean, there was a outrageous robbery at Sejoran Best Buys Limited. Then there was a home invasion in Palm Avenue in Esperanza, and all this is happening under a state of emergency. We have over 75 murders, but what is not being reported in this country is the number of robberies and home invasions and so on that are occurring with impunity in the background of a state of emergency. That is not being reported.
Which I find amazing, because we're supposed to have more resources allocated to assist the police.
You know how many people's phones were stolen or snatched during Carnival? You know how many? It was not only Samantha Best, the former news reporter and lead at TV6. It had a number of persons who lost their phones in Cuba, Juve, and Shagwana, Juve, and so on. And that this is not being told by Minister. Well, I really don't like to refer to him, but he's the outgoing minister, Minister Hines. And you will every carnival, what this walk of confidence, you will see him and all the heads of the law enforcement agencies strutting around South Key and the streets of Port of Spain. While we want a safe carnival, what you want is a safe environment for the people of this country year round also.
Exactly. And and these are the things that people need to focus on than the little nonsense that they are more primarily focused on, and a self-serving agenda, which we have seen, which none of the person, if given the opportunity, could hold the post. So well, we will deal with that as times go along. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time. Chris, you want to add anything to MP Indarsingh?
I wanna thank both of you guys for the opportunity to again get the message out there. Again, as I said earlier, it's a lot different now, and now we actually have persons paying attention to what we say, and I'm thankful to you as well as the contributions from MP Indarsingh.
And I want to say that the channel is available in the midst of an incident, something taking place. You want to come live, just give me a holler, and that goes to MP Indarsingh, all our UNC people, including a criminal incident, where something is broken and you want to bring it to the attention. You don't have to stay an hour. You come 5-10 minutes and you bring it to the attention of the public, and the channel is available even that. So with that, I want to thank both of you for taking the time, and I would say good night, and we'll be in touch.
A pleasant good night. Be
Yes.
safe, and we will continue to be in touch.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join in us, and we will meet again soon. Thank you. Good night, everybody.